So good morning and welcome to our webinar hosted by the Israel Ministry of Tourism and industry guests. We have Fred, Corey, and Ellie with us. If you want to unmute and just say hi to everyone.
Hey everyone.
Morning, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
So that's Corey and Fred. Ellie, do you want to also say good morning?
He's muted.
Yes, good morning and welcome everybody.
So although this time period is challenging for all of us, it is also a good excuse to learn about new destinations and products the world has to offer. Dream now, travel after. Today, we will talk about an important product Israel has to offer with an expert Israeli tour guide, that's Ellie, and two bloggers who travel the world searching for accessible destinations. My name is Yael Golan, and I'm the consul and director for the southern region of the US, based in Atlanta. Together with our offices in New York, Chicago, Toronto, and LA, we comprise the IMOT Israel Ministry of Tourism North America team. Our work has changed dramatically since March of this year, but after we realized where we're all going, that's home, we quickly adapted and started offering online resources such as webinars, this is a good example, and tutorials. We are also trying to keep Israel top of mind by launching a social media activity accompanied by the hashtag Inspired by Israel that I hope you're all, if you haven't used till now, you're gonna use after this webinar, and promoting the many virtual tours we have to offer. Last week, we started a series of Instagram Lives about the amazing Israeli culture and cuisine, so we hope you can catch that as well. With an estimated 1 in 8 people worldwide living with a disability, travelers with disabilities make up one of the fastest growing tourism markets. By disability, I include all forms, not only mobility. Worldwide, the accessible tourism market represents more than 2.2 billion people that control over $8 trillion in annual disposable income. In the US, an estimated 17.3 billion is spent by adults with disabilities on travel each year. This is a subject near and dear to the hearts of Israelis, of course for Ellie and myself. Not only have we made many improvements to our sites and infrastructure to accommodate accessible travel, but Israel is a world leader, innovating technology that makes life easier for those with disabilities. It is a point of pride, and I think you will hear it come through during this presentation. So diving into our topic today, and before I turn the mic to our guests, I wanted to go over a few key NGOs and nonprofits in the Israeli accessibility landscape in Israel. And before I continue, I hope that you will use the chat box. And if you have any questions for me, Ellie, Corey, and Fred, feel free and we will answer you as we continue. So the Israel Ministry of Tourism is committed and working towards enabling everyone who wishes to visit, regardless of any possible impairment. When it comes to accessibility, Israel is a world leader in legislation from infrastructure to service, and we are constantly improving. No one's perfect, but we've made a long way throughout the past years. And you can really see it in JNF's, the Jewish National Fund, Accessible Forest Project, and the Israel Nature and Parks Authority. I've attached the links in this presentation, and we will be able to send it to whoever wishes to at the end. So both of those NGOs have been working to making forests and parks accessible to people with all kinds of impairments. By the way, the Israel Nature and Parks Authority has opened 20 parks for domestic travel, kind of looping back into COVID-19, that are not open for Israelis with pre-order and pre-purchase. So we're not just leading in accessibility, but also trying to, and listening to the Israeli audience that has also been stuck at home and wants to travel. So except for JNFs and the INPA, we have Yad Sarah for Tourists, which is an organization who can help people with accessibility by providing equipment being brought to Israel, helping people adjust their hotel rooms, also providing vehicles with a modest fee, and also helping if you want to consult with them about a specialized tour guide, such as Eli, and also sites that are easily accessed. So you can contact them in the email that's appearing here. And the last organizations I wanted to mention are Access Israel and Lotem. And I want to just briefly focus on them because both of them are a truly great story. So Access Israel is a nonprofit organization that promotes accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities and the elderly in all spheres of life. It was founded in 1999 by a former helicopter pilot who became wheelchair-bound following a helicopter accident. The organization provides accessibility consulting for businesses, courses such as sign language, and they also work to promote accessibility in the Israeli law. So that's Access Israel. And Lotem is the largest organization for outdoor learning activities for children with special needs, providing outdoor educational activities as well as accessible hikes. It was founded by Sorin Hershko, a war hero who was severely injured in the Operation Entebbe in 1976. Their headquarters and main activity site, Emek HaShalom, Valley of Peace, is a 40-acre farm located in northern Israel, and it provides a hands-on learning experience with teaching garden, wheelchair accessible olive and wine presses. I found about it while researching for a webinar, and it's super cool. They also have a bakery and a wheelchair accessible trail. So now that we covered the main organization, just to touch transportation in Israel. So the Israel Airport Authority is responsible for providing the physical infrastructure around the airport, but the handling lies with the respective airline, and there are three main ground handling companies, Aero Handling, Laufer Aviation, GHI, and QAS. You can also choose to move around Israel by train, buses, or taxis. The Israel Railways company would love if you can contact them prior to traveling so they can make sure they assist you. But you can also travel on a train without pre-coordination. Buses, all the buses in Israel inside the cities are suitable for people with disabilities, and you can get a taxi on the go or pre-order. So for different people with different disabilities and also different characters, you can either pre-order, pre-coordinate, or be on the go. So I hope that gave you a short sense of how close this topic is to Israelis and how we've been improving. And now I want to hand the mic to Eli Meiri. And just to let you know about Eli. Eli is the founder of Israel for All, a former social worker, a pioneer of bringing people with all kinds of disabilities and special needs to Israel. Eli is a tour guide and a travel agent. So Eli, the floor is yours.
Yes. Okay. So it's a pleasure to meet all of you. First of all, over here, I see that we have already about 90 participants. It's nice to have you all here. And really, Yael told that I'm a pioneer of accessible tourism in Israel. And yes, for about 20 years, 21 years now, from 1998, actually 22 years, I'm doing tours for people with disabilities, organizing and guiding the tours. And some of the people here were traveling with me or were in contact with me, and I'm happy to be here with you. Um, do we have the slides? Yael? Are you putting the slides? Okay. Here we have a group of people just very lately. This is 2019, almost the last group I had before the COVID-19, and they all came from the States, organized by Deborah Kerper, and they came to visit their country. They came to see actually the Holy Land. They wanted to see the Holy Land like the tours that we were doing before. So Holy Land, going on the footsteps of Jesus, and we covered quite a lot of the sites that are already accessible. And during the years that I'm in this business, quite a lot of the sites have been accessible. And here we are by the Western Wall and on the Dome of the Rock, by the Dome of the Rock. All of them are accessible for wheelchairs and for other people also. Can we put the other one, please? Okay. Not only going to the wall or so, people start to find the adventures that they can do. Here we see some people doing hand biking around the country. You can rent a hand bike in Israel and go by hand bike if you can, and or to combine it with other adventures that are, or other regular sites that we have. We can go to the churches, we can go to the Jewish quarter or everywhere that you like. The Ministry of Tourism, together with the company of developing the old city of Jerusalem, they made an effort, and now all the old city is very accessible. You can see that we have also quite a lot of seashores that are accessible now. So people are going for all kinds of sports by the sea, kite surfing, or sailing, and they do it quite easily because the sites are quite accessible. Quite a lot of the beaches are accessible now, and they're getting more and more accessible. Here we can also see the pathway to go to Rosh Hanikra, the northeast place of Israel, northeast point on the Lebanon border. We can also go down to the south, down to the south to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea also, the Ministry of Tourism invested quite a lot of money for making a wonderful, wonderful promenade around the Dead Sea, and to build accessibility roads into the sea itself. You can see a ramp here by one of the beaches that goes all the way to the water. We can also supply water wheelchairs, but you can get with your own wheelchair quite to the water. Of course, Masada is also, they invested quite a lot of money to make Masada more accessible, and we can go to Masada. There's a cable car going all the way to the top, and it's all accessible. And if you like to go into the desert itself, you can do it also with a special wheelchair, all-terrain wheelchair, that you can go on trails that are not accessible for other wheelchairs. Or to take a jeep tour into the desert and to see and feel quite a lot of the experiences of the desert and of the Dead Sea area. You can go all the way to Eilat and also to the hills of Eilat. That is also accessible by this vehicle, by this all-terrain vehicle, and you can get there. So that's quite a short introduction to how accessible tourism started in Israel from more than 20 years ago till today. Today, on the last 2 years, I hit back the road. I'm working as a tour guide with a very accessible vehicle, a new one, and we can go and do these all kinds of accessible tours all over Israel.
Yeah, you're muted, Gal. You're still muted. There you go.
Good?
Yeah.
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 You don't want to know what I just said. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
So thank you, Ellie, for that short, not introduction, but accessibility travel in Israel from your perspective. And I just wanted to mention one more thing before we move to Q&A with the experts. I wanted to mention something about accommodation in Israel. And again, just to let you know how seriously we take it. So in any type of accommodation in Israel that has 7 or more rooms, it's required by law to provide at least 1 accessible room. So for every 7, 1. And if you have a minimum of 25 employees in a bed and breakfast or a hotel, you are also required to have an accessibility supervisor. Both of these laws are there to assure you that there is no corner that we left unturned and that we could provide you with cater your needs in any type of disability. So that's just something I wanted to mention. I know that I went through the different organizations and details, and it was important for me to stay corrected. So I used my notes. I hope that now we can make it less formal, because I'm very happy to host two people. One of them I met in Israel, Corey, when he was there. Fred, I got to know only in the making of this webinar, but they're both, like I said before, they traveled the world to find accessible destinations. And I'm happy that they had the chance to visit Israel and enjoy it. And we thought the best way to talk about Israel is by asking and answering questions about what did they anticipated before they traveled to Israel, if they came across any challenges. So hearing from their experience will be the best. But before we dive into the questions, I just want to give you a short introduction about Fred and Corey. So Fred is a passionate and recognized leader in the international disability community and accessible travel and tourism industry and in corporate America. He is also a renowned champion for diversity and inclusion. As president of FJM Solutions, he has delivered keynote speeches on the international stage and is considered a voice for people with disabilities. FJM Solutions works with individuals, corporations, nonprofits, and governments to find solutions to the challenges that people with disabilities face. He's also a partner and Chief Operations Officer for Travel for All. Headquartered in Canada, Travel for All provides global, accessible, and inclusive travel experiences tailored to the unique needs of each traveler. And I will add that during my, my research, I also found out he has been a guest in the White House. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes. Yeah, I was very, very fortunate. Yes.
So that's Fred. And Corey, Corey Lee has traveled to all 7 continents, which is more than I did. So very jealous, while managing to run his travel blog, curbfreewithcoreylee.com, where he shares his accessible and sometimes not so accessible travel adventures with others. Corey's blog has received the prestigious Webby Award for Best Personal Blog and 2 Lowell Thomas Awards for Best Travel Blog. He was named New Mobility Magazine's 2018 Person of the Year. Corey hopes to inspire other wheelchair users to roll out of their comfort zone and see of all the beauty that the world has to offer. So thank you so much, guys. And let's jump to the first question. And by answering that, you can also say a little bit more about yourself if you want. So what were your expectations before traveling to Israel?
I guess I'll start. My expectations were really, I mean, since Israel is known for its history, I mean, I really wasn't expecting the level of accessibility that it does have, especially in Jerusalem and the older sites. So, I mean, I really expected Jerusalem to be very bumpy and like not really wheelchair friendly, like no ramps into, you know, like the popular landmarks. And so it really surprised me though. And I was really surprised to know and learn that there are actually accessible routes through the old city. And that's something that I think the country of Israel has worked on, and the city of Jerusalem. And so it was really, really great to discover that and learn that I actually could explore Jerusalem just like any other visitor.
And for me, I would say that very similar to what Corey just said, was not, frankly, because I just hadn't really researched it a lot, was not expecting Israel to be as accessible as it was, especially in the old city and going through Jerusalem, and then was pleasantly and excitedly surprised once Eli took us to Masada and the Dead Sea. That was just an amazing adventure. So yeah, I was just very, very pleasantly surprised at the accessibility in Israel.
So we can say that the key word is surprised. You thought Israel would be, you know, it's not only in the accessible realm, but we're out there in the field where, I mean, before March 2020, talking to people, and Israel is full of surprises. It could be accessible travel, it could be faith-based, it could be people who think that Israel is archaic and everyone is old, and then find out it's super young and bustling. So I'm happy you got to experience that.
It was wonderful.
So jumping to the next question, what is the difference between touring Israel in a manual wheelchair and in a power wheelchair?
I think, I mean, I use a power wheelchair, and so traveling as a power wheelchair user, I'm pretty weak because I have muscular dystrophy. And so my muscles aren't as strong as, you know, like an able-bodied person or even someone in a manual chair that maybe can push themselves in their manual chair. And so I always have to travel with a companion and have sometimes special equipment with me. And so even if someone, you know, is traveling to Israel in a power wheelchair and they maybe need like adaptive equipment such as the Hoyer lift or whatever it is, there are organizations such as Israel for All, which Ellie runs, and a Yad Sarah that can get you that equipment. And I think that's really, really good to know, whether you use a manual wheelchair and need that, or if you use a power wheelchair.
And for me, I use a manual wheelchair, but I will tell you, even, you know, as of course, as any person, as you begin to age and you're using a manual chair, my backup was Ely and my friends from Italy and Germany who were also on the tour with us, because, you know, when you get into some of the areas, you know, as anyone would, and you're using your arms, you're going to get tired, or you're going to get a little sore. You know, I found that mostly to be once we got to Masada, because some of the hills there and some of the inclines, even on the accessible pathways, were a little bit steep. But with a little bit of my backup, my friends, we were able to do it. And that was, I have to say, it was pretty exciting. You know, and we'll get into something later, you know, once we were in the Holy City, which I thought was pretty amazing too. But yeah, I got to tell you, Corey, there were times where I could have used that power chair though.
Yeah. Yeah, especially at Masada. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always say Israel is really, it's the destination for active tourism, because people don't realize that we're all about being active and walking everywhere,
Oh yeah.
including
great.
Masada and Jerusalem. But after you finish your tour, you feel very content because you did it. I mean, you walked or used a wheelchair, or however you experienced the old city of Jerusalem, and you know, you guys being able to go up to Masada is amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
So we just
Speaking of which,
speaking of which, what kind of adventure travel or activities are available in Israel?
Corey, you got to start with that one, because you
Yeah.
were the adventurous one.
I know, and
All right.
and I'll just say that in preparation for the webinar, I again got very jealous because I've never been in a hot balloon.
Yeah, I mean, Ellie talked about all kinds of adventure earlier, such as kite surfing, but when I was in Israel, I actually got to go in a hot air balloon with a company called Over Israel. And we got in the hot air balloon. It's pictured there, my mom and I in the balloon. And they actually have a seat in the balloon that I was able to get transferred into. And then with a remote control, the seat can actually raise up and down. So I was able to see over the basket and look at the Negev desert down below. And so it was like, lasted for a couple hours and was just breathtakingly beautiful, and one of my favorite experiences that I've had anywhere in the world ever. So that experience really like put Israel over the edge for me and made me fall in love with it.
Yeah. And,
Beautiful.
And for me, you know, we were just speaking about Masada, but frankly, that was, I guess, my biggest adventure on this trip was, you know, going to the top of Masada. You know, I mean, we took an accessible cable car, which was really easy. And then once we got to the top, we had a little bit of hiking and navigating to do on mostly accessible trails. But frankly, you know, once you get up there, it's just breathtaking with everything that you can see, and frankly, as much as you can get around up there. I hope to get back to Israel and do the I think it was told to me the extreme sports version of the tour. So if it's zip lining or hot air ballooning or you know, kites or whatever, count me in. I want to try it.
Yeah, so we have a question that popped up on the chat. I closed it, but somebody was asking about a good group size. And I know, Corey, you were too, but Fred, you traveled with a group.
Yeah, literally three other, excuse me, three other guys and Ely. But you know, I would say that was comfortable. You know, I think frankly, even if there were a few more of us on the trip, it would have been fine. I think it really just depends on everybody's individual comfort levels, and you know, different places get a lot more crowded, for instance, than others. And certainly, when we got to Masada, after you get to, I'll say, the ticket area, after a couple of elevators. Once you get into that ticket area, it gets really, really crowded. So you have to just be really mindful of where your tour guide is, where your friends are, and stick together. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to get lost. But other than that, I think it was perfectly fine and perfectly comfortable and navigable.
I would like to answer this question.
Yeah,
I would like to answer this question, and I think that a good size can be between family with one wheelchair and more participants, or up to we had tours with up to 5 or 6 wheelchairs and their people. So that is a good size. We can handle this size of groups. As I said before, we had maybe I didn't say, but we had a full-size bus that we can use. They can take up to 11 wheelchairs on board. So I'm not suggesting to take such a big group. We need more space for 5 wheelchairs and other participants coming with them. So it's a good size of 6 people on wheelchairs and more participants.
Thank you. So jumping to the challenges in accessible travel, did you come across an accessibility challenge? How did you handle it? And what was your resolution? And Fred?
Yeah, Corey, I'll
start
take
with
this
that.
one.
Yeah.
I'll start with this one. So whenever I travel, and I've, for folks who don't know, I had a diving accident when I was 18 and became paralyzed from the chest down. And I traveled quite extensively before my accident, and even more so since. So whenever I travel, here in the U.S., outside of the U.S., it doesn't matter. I always do my homework. And even though the website might say the place is accessible, or I've heard that it's accessible, I will always contact the hotel or the resort or whatever it might be directly, and usually ask for pictures and other things, description of the room, you name it. So the little glitch here in the trip, and we had a workaround, but the glitch is when we arrived in Tel Aviv, pardon me, in the hotel, you know, for people like Corey and I, we can tell literally within seconds if something is accessible or truly what is classified as an accessible room. And literally, you know, once I opened the door, I knew immediately that this had been a room that had been probably quickly but not adequately adapted for accessibility. So, for instance, you're seeing pictures of the bathroom in the hotel room, and it's a little. This picture doesn't do it justice, but literally, when you open the bathroom door, the commode is literally about 2 feet directly in front of you. And then immediately to your left, you'll see the vanity with a sink, but you literally can't turn your wheelchair to get under the sink. You had to kind of go on a weird angle, and not even get really to the sink, which, by the way, if you notice, the sink was one of those raised bowls above the counter. Therefore, the mirror was up higher, which all of that is not really conducive to accessibility. And then you'll also notice in the picture on the right that the shower was directly, as you can see, and I mean directly, next to the commode. And because of the seat that was in the shower, not accessible for me. So my workaround was I was able to contact a gentleman in Israel by the name of Sachar Hillel, and he has a medical equipment rental company. I was able to rent a shower chair that I could propel by myself, and work around some of this. What you don't see is that the rest of the room, the bed was really low, and it was kind of weird. It was really close to the closet doors. So when you open the closet doors, you couldn't get in the closet because you couldn't get your wheelchair between the bed and the doors and other stuff. So I had someone who actually helped me rearrange every piece of furniture in the room, so I could get into the closet, could actually, we had to raise the bed up with another mattress, working with the manager. But, all to say that these are things that should not have been, right? An accessible room, I would not have had to, or no one would have to have dealt with any of this, it would have been, we would have been able to use the bathroom, for instance, as a wheelchair user, or even get into the closet and those kinds of things. So for anyone traveling with any type of disability, if you don't, I would highly suggest that do your homework, even though the website or the brochures or whatever it might be claims that they're accessible. Make sure you do your due diligence and check ahead and find out for sure.
Yeah. Also, that's a good tip for anyone traveling. I've traveled to resort properties, destinations around the world that I thought will be this and ended up being that. And at the end, it's our responsibility as travelers. We need to check where we're going, how we get there, if the luggage included, if the luggage is not included, if the resort really has that, if the city. So I understand. And like I said, we are evolving, and I'm sure we have a long way to go, but Israel is very young. We're only 72 years old. So I hope that by the next time you travel and other colleagues of yours will be in a better place. But I do appreciate you sharing this. And when we discussed earlier, one thing that I mentioned is that Israelis are not afraid to be honest about when they're wrong. So that's something of the Israeli spirit throughout this webinar. So thank you, Fred. Corey, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would like to add one quick note. So I've definitely been through experiences like that, Fred, with hotels that said they were accessible, and then I got there and they weren't. But when I was in Israel, I was really lucky to stay in some really nice hotels. So I stayed at like the Leonardo Plaza in Tiberias, and the Dan Hotel in Haifa, and then in the Intercontinental in Tel Aviv, and they were all spectacularly accessible for me. But one thing that I've started doing, maybe a travel tip for anyone watching in the past couple of years, is requesting photos of the accessible room. And that really, like before I actually go on the trip. And so by seeing photos and videos of the accessible room before going, it really just gives me a chance to, make sure that it really, really is accessible. And so maybe anyone traveling to Israel, I'm sure that, Ellie probably has some photos of accessible rooms, or even just call the hotel and request that. And they're usually very happy to provide photos of the room.
And I want to add one more thing, Corey. For folks on the call, for what it's worth, this year marks the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act here in the U.S. and some very close friends of mine, Congressman Tony Coelho and Senator Tom Harkin, co-authored the Americans with Disabilities Act. And here we are 30 years later. And trust me, Corey and I are still calling hotels to find out whether or not they're accessible, because even though here in the US, places will tell you many times that, yes, we're accessible. But once you get there, you're going in a back alley or down a crazy hallway or through somebody's kitchen to get to where you want to go. And you still might find a room like this, like you're seeing. So no, it's not perfect. It's not perfect here in the US. I haven't found utopia yet. But I think if collectively, if we continue to work together and educate one another and share our experiences in a good way, not in an angry way, and you know, more of a conversational way, we can get there. You know, it's it'll take time, but we can get there, and that's why Corey and I are here to help.
I would like to add something else. If you are going with a company that is in charge of hosting you, you are expecting that we'll check the rooms and everything will be fine. And yes, this is our job. Unfortunately, both of you haven't been with the company organized tour, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There are different disabilities that can be accommodated in different ways, and we are trying. And I know that Israel for All, that I'm not part of it already, but they are doing quite a great job of looking for the right hotels, right rooms, right bathrooms, and even other companies that are working now in Israel are checking pre-coming. Before you ask, they'll ask you more questions, and to know what your needs are and what can be done for accommodating you better. So as you said, everywhere, anywhere in the world, that you can come and find that the room is not perfect for you. But while going around, you have to know that you can go around and find the answers. And answers are available everywhere.
All right, we have one or two more questions, and I want to respect people's time and finish in 5 minutes or so. So let's move.
Sure.
We'll talk fast.
What was your favorite experience in Israel? I know, but I don't
really?
I know we should have started with it, but let's try and squeeze it.
You know, literally every single thing that we did, especially you know, finding new friends, was all very special. But for me, I would say one of the most meaningful things for me was being able to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and literally being able to get my wheelchair inside of Jesus's tomb. That was extremely meaningful and powerful and inspirational and lots of other adjectives. But for me, that was probably the highlight, other than, honestly, you know, all of the other amazing things we did.
And I would say, I mean, aside from the hot air ballooning that I talked about earlier, I mean, that's very high on my list and one of my favorite experiences in Israel. But aside from that, I would say just getting to meet the Israeli people and interacting with them. And I'll never forget, we were in Jerusalem one day, and it was like a pretty cold day. I went in, I think it was in March. And so it was pretty cold, and I was like shivering, and a guy that worked in a shop in Jerusalem saw that I was like really cold and like shivering, and so he came out and gave me a free like blanket to put on me, and it like helped warm me up. And it's just like small experiences like that that really mean a lot and make me fall in love with a place. And in Israel, there was definitely no shortage of anything like that.
I would agree. Yep.
So the last question, would you suggest traveling to Israel?
No, geez. Seriously, absolutely, with beyond a doubt, and would do it, in a millisecond. Come back, visit, spend time, suggest. You name it. Loved it tremendously.
Yeah, and I would say, absolutely. It's one of my favorite trips of all time. I've been twice now, and I can't wait to go a third time. So
Yep.
It's a destination that I want to keep going back to because I know there's more to explore. And I would say if you're going, just be sure to do your research in advance for accessibility and consider going with a company such as Israel for All, Ellie's company, like I did, and they will take care of you, do a phenomenal job, and you'll really enjoy it.
I couldn't have said it better, Corey. Very good.
So before we conclude, I've been getting messages on the chat asking about when is Israel back to accepting international travelers. Khalid, I see you nodding your head. And questions about what the new normal be. And I still don't have an answer. I still don't have the full answer, and I don't want to give half answers because that will be unprofessional. We are currently in a mode of reopening for domestic travel, which absolutely makes sense because we want to check the waters before accepting people that are not Israelis. So like I said, we opened around 20 national parks, and people can go there and visit via the website. It's in Hebrew, in English, and in Arabic. The beaches have opened. So we're taking step by step. Bed and breakfasts that only have one level of accommodation have opened. So we're really testing the waters. And we're one of the first countries. At the beginning, it was very hard, that closed its borders for international travel. And I remember the first week, people were calling me, not understanding what we're doing. So we were the first to go in, and we hope we're the first one to come out. But when it comes to international travel, it's about relationships and partnerships. So we gotta make sure that everybody's safe on the Israeli side, on the American side, on the German side, on the Cyprus side. So once we open the borders, it's a worldwide effort. So we still don't know. The Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Tourism are working on new regulations for hotels. The times of the buffet are over on cruises, but also in Israel, we're gonna go to a la carte. But there are so many changes, and we're working behind the stage and, backstage. And I promise that when we have anything to share, we will. If you want to email me directly at director-atlanta@goisrael.gov.il, I will make sure to answer you or to direct you to the respective office. So I got a question from Canada. I'll send you to Gal in Canada, Chad in New York, Jill or Anat in the different offices. And again, we're here for you. We're on the phone every day. So don't email us with questions. We might say no, but you can still email us. I'm on the phone every day with the same advisors, with the same operators, and I love it. It's the best thing I can offer in these times of uncertainty. So that's about travel in general. And I'll just share my screen one last time so I could show you guys that we're on social media, we're on Instagram. We have our mini website, Israel, a destination accessible travel in Israel, showing you that there are beaches that are dedicated for people with disabilities, and a list of all the national parks and the links. And we really hope that you stay #inspired by Israel. and we miss you all. We can't wait to have all of y'all back. So thanks, Ellie, Corey, and Fred. And thank you guys for holding up and spending some time with us. And
thank you, Yael.
Thank you, Yael. Thank you all.
right.
Thanks,
and,
everybody.
Be in touch.